Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation on translation techniques of dialect and sociolects by Stig Johansson. Today we'll explore how translation theory addresses the complexities of dialect and sociolects with a focus on Johansson's groundbreaking contribution in corpus-based contrastive linguistics.
So before we do the presentations, we would like to introduce our member of the group. The first one is me, Azabiski, with student number 032.
Hello, my name is Muhammad Hikaru and my student number is 81.
My name is Dafar Ilahi with student number 161. And today's goal is to highlight the importance of empirical methods in understanding linguistic nuances across language. Next slide. Let's begin with a brief overview of translation theory. At its core, translation theory examines how we can convert text from one language to another while maintaining both meaning and cultural context. This becomes particularly challenging when dealing with dialects and sociolects, which carry unique linguistic nuance tied to specific regions or social groups. Stig Johansson's work in corpus-based in linguistics provide us with empirical tools to study these phenomena systematically, making his contribution highly relevant for both translator and linguist. Next slide. Now, let's talk about Stig Johansson, a Swedish Norwegian linguist who made significant contribution to the field of corpus-based linguistics. Born in 1939, he served as a professor at the University of Oslo until his passing in 2010. Johansson was a pioneer in the field. He founded ICAM, the International Computer Archive of Modern and Medieval English, which remains a key resource for linguists worldwide. He also developed influential multilingual corpora like the LOP corpus and the English-Norwegian Parallel Corpus or ENPC. These resources reflect his dedication to creating principal methods for compiling and analyzing linguistic data. Next slide. Let's delve in Let's delve into some of the key ideas behind corpus-based contrastive linguistics. Corpus linguistics involve the empirical study of language through large database of real-world text. Contrastive analysis builds on this by comparing linguistic features across language to uncover patterns and translation effects. Johansson introduced a bidirectional model that combines translation corpora, text translated between two languages, and comparable corpora, text written independently in each language, to analyze cross-linguistic correspondence. This approach has been instrumental in identifying how dialects and sociolects are represented in translation. Next.
Now, please let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Hikaru, and now I'm going to talk about what is the translation technique for dialects. Translation technique for dialects. Now let's discuss dialects. Regional variations in language that encompass unique vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Translating dialects presents challenges, such as maintaining regional identity while ensuring that the target audience comprehends the message. Techniques used in this context include adaptation, where cultural references are modified, transliterations, which invokes converting text phonetically, and annotations, which provide additional context for explanations for specific terms. Stig Johansson's works emphasize when translating dialects. For instance, in his studies of English Norwegian translations, he highlights how dialect features in Norwegian rural dialects are often adapted into English using regional equivalents like Southern American or Scottish dialects to preserve social stratification. For the example, imagine translating a Japanese folk tale where a farmer says, "Buatan usah repot-repot." In English, it means "don't bother." In formal Japanese, a literal translation would lose the rustic realm. Johansson's corpus-driven approach makes suggest replacing it with a southern US dialect like "ain't no need to fuss" to mirror the speaker's rural identity. This adaptation technique maintains the character's voice while ensuring relatability for English audience. Now moving to the next slide. Now I'm going to talk about examples of translating dialects Indonesian to English. Johansson's corpus-based methods reveal that dialect translation thrives on parallel text analysis. Here are some practical examples of translating dialects between Indonesian and English. First, in literature, translating Japanese proverbs in novels require careful considerations to preserve their cultural significance. In translating ngeluru tanpa bolo, menang tanpa ngasorake, which means conquer without an army, win without an humiliation. Johansson's make advocate for annotations. A footnote could explain this proverb's ties to Japanese philosophy of humility, while the main text uses a culturally neutral phrase like victory without dominance. Second is in advertisement. Localized expressions like ngopi yuk, which means let's have a coffee, can be effectively adapted for marketing campaigns. Corpus studies shows that localized slogans resonate best when paired with dynamic equivalents instead of a literal "let's have a coffee." Johansson's approach might inspire "brew up some joy," which capture the casual communal vibes of ngopi yuk while aligning with English coffee culture. The third one is film subtitles. When translating Betawi dialects to English subtitles, adjustment might be made to capture humor and tone while remaining accessible. Betawi humor in Sidul Anak Sekolahan relies on wordplay like gue mah orang sini, which means I'm a local. Johansson's constructive analysis would recommend translation with contextual tweaks like I'm from these streets, which retaining the original swagger while making the humor accessible. Now moving to the next slide. Now we're going to talk about the translation technique for sociolects. Next, we turn into sociolects, language varieties associated with specific social groups, such as slang or jargon. The challenge here lies in balancing authenticity with audience understanding. Technique employed including contextualization, which places terms with their social context, with equivalence in mapping, where similar terms are found in the target language, and dynamic equivalence, which ensure that the overall meaning resonates with the audience. Johansson's research on sociolects traces register mapping. For example, Norwegian youth slang "kos" or "chill vibes" is often translated into English using Gen Z terms like "vibe check" to reflect the same social group. Now, let's turn into the example of corpus-based twist of all slides that highlight Johansson's methodology. By analyzing parallel corpora, like Indonesian novels and their English translations, translators can identify patterns. For instance, Japanese honorifics like Pak, Bu are often replaced with Sir or Ma'am or Ma'am in English. Now we talk about the examples of translating sociolects Indonesian to English. Let's dive into Stig Johansson's corpus bed strategies to make these examples come alive. Songs. Youth slang in Indonesian pop lyrics can be translated into relatable English phrases that resonate with young audience. For examples, the Indonesian slang bucin, which means budak cinta or love slave, in lyrics often refers to someone obsessively in love. A direct translation like love slave risks sounding archaic or overall literal. Johansson's approach using parallel corpora. Johansson might identify an English Gen Z equivalent like Sims, a term when someone is overly submissive to a crush in narrative. Now imagine translating, aku bucin banget sama dia, which means I'm such a bucin for them. A corpus analysis of English pop lyrics reveals Sim as the closest sociolect match. The line becomes, I'm such a sim for them, which preserve the style, replicating humor while resonating with young global audience. Now, the second one is film subtitles. Jakarta's street slang is often rendered into informal English while retaining its original tone. For example, in Dylan 1990, characters use lo gue, Jakarta informal you and me, to signal camaraderie. A literal you and me loses the sociolects edge. So Johansson's strategy is to apply dynamic equivalence by mapping lo gue to English urban sociolects like you and me or us two with contractions. Now a character quips, lo jangan ngaco, gue serius nih, which means don't mess around, I'm serious. Johansson's corpus-driven methods might render this as quit playing, I'm dead ass. Using African American vernacular English AAVE to mirror the original's informal streetwise tone. Now the third one is in literature. In autobiographies that feature sociolects, adaptations are made to ensure that they are accessible to international readers without losing their essence. For example, an Indonesian memoirist uses ally over dramatic or cringe behavior in English to describe a character. So translating ally requires balancing specific and accessible. Johansson's technique use contextualization by pairing terms with explanatory phrasing in narrative. The sentence, dia acting alay banget, means in English, they're acting so alay. Could become, they're doing way too much, full cringe mode. Here, Johansson's contrastive analysis might borrow from English internet slang like chigui, which means out of touch strength or extra, to ensure the sociolect's social judgment is retained. Now move to the next slide.
So my name is Azariski Fayawa with student number 032, and I will do the presentation the rest of this slide. So now is application across various media. The first one is literature, balancing vitality and readability when translating dialect-heavy novels, such as when reading a book where a character speaks with a very strong regional accent or use old-fashioned words. When translating the book, the translator has a big job and they need to make sure that English speakers understand the is often tied to how they speak, and sometimes they might use a similar regional dialect in English, or they might explain the meaning in a way that still feels authentic. It's a balancing act between keeping the original flavor and making it readable for a new audience. And the second one it is advertisements, ensuring a cultural resonance through localized translation strategies. The example is when companies want their ads to connect with people on a personal level. In Indonesia, like what have mentioned by Hikaru before. The local phrase like ngopi yuk or ngeteh yuk can make an ad feel warm and inviting. And when translating this for an English speaking audience, direct translation might not have the same feeling. Instead, the translator might choose a phrase like, let's grab a coffee, let's have a cup of a tea, depending on the target audience and the overall feel of the ad. The goal is to create the same positive connection even if the words are different. And the next one is film subtitles or songs, capturing emotional tone and cultural nuances using Johansson's corpus based methods. The example is when you're watching an Indonesian movie with characters who speak a specific dialect or use a lot of slang. The subtitles need to capture not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. If a character from Jakarta using slangs, in the English subtitle might use informal English phrases to give the same impression of their social group and personality. Similarly, in songs, translating slang or informal language needs to consider the rhythm and feeling of the music. And this example emphasizes that Johansson's corpus based approach can help analyze how emotions and social identities conveyed through language have been translated in film and song lyrics in the past. Decision making in translation. Audience familiarity with source culture. For example, if the people reading or watching the translation know a lot about Indonesian culture, the translator might keep some of the original cultural references or dialect features and explain them. But if the audience is completely new to Indonesian culture, the translator might need to adapt things more so they understand the meaning without getting confused. For example, translating a Japanese proverb might require a brief explanation of its cultural significance for an English speaking audience. And the second one is linguistic equivalence versus cultural adaptation. Sometimes a direct word for word translation of a dialect or sociolect might sound strange or not make sense in English, but in this case, the translator might choose to focus on finding equivalent expression in English that has a similar effect. Even if the words are different, this is the differences between linguistic equivalence that refers to similar words and cultural adaptation that refers to similar feeling or impact. And the third one is genre specific requirements. For example, humor in films versus seriousness in legal text. In a comedy, capturing the humor of dialect or slang is crucial, even if it means taking more liberties with the literal translation. However, in a legal text, accuracy and clarity are the top priorities. So the translator might focus on explaining the meaning of a specific term rather than trying to find a slang equivalent. Impact on translation studies pioneered corpus-based approaches for analyzing linguistic phenomena across languages. And then practical application. Enhanced translation accuracy in literature, media, and academic studies by using corpora to see how languages compare and how translation have been done in the past. Translators can make more informed decisions. And the last one is the conclusion. To wrap up our discussion today, we have explored key techniques for translating dialects and sociolects using Stig Johansson's methods. Like we've seen that translating dialects and sociolects is more than just finding the right words because it involves understanding the cultural background and the social group and the overall feeling of the language. And Stig Johansson's legacy continues to influence modern translation practice by emphasizing empirical analyzing through corpora. And from this, we can study how this unique language variation use and how they've been translated in the past. And this empirical approach gives the translator better tools and insights to make informed decisions. And these are the references. And thank you so much for the attendance and for our presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.